Hi everyone, this is an online lecture for Market Structures Part 1. Now previously we're looking at buyers and sellers through the demand and supply diagram. Alright, the consumers and the sellers in action, and maybe add in the government that can come in and regulate certain things. Now we will expand the scope a little bit to look at the market of a particular good or service. When we look at the sellers as a group, okay, what are some of the characteristics and what does the picture look like? Now there are four different types of market structures. Okay, from the left to the right, you have perfect com in green over here. All right, and then you have monocom, oligopoly, and monopoly. Now, the way that we identify market structures or the way that we characterize them, all right, is based on some measurements, some common measurements, like are there many firms or just one firm? Okay, what is their share of market? All right, is it small share or is it the entire market? What kind of product are they selling? Okay, and whether they can enter or leave the market freely on their own, or are there barriers? Okay, so these are the general characteristics, the way that we will classify different market structures. Of course, there are other unique features as well of different market structure. We'll come to that shortly. But usually we categorize market structures by these few characteristics. Okay. Now, when we look at market structures from the left to the right, okay. Now, perfect com and monopoly are extreme ends. Okay, extreme ends. In monopoly, you have only one seller. In perfect com, you have many small sellers. Okay. Now, how do we understand market structures in general? When you move from perfect com to monopoly, all right, from the left to the right, what you see would be there'll be less and less sellers when you move to the right, and when there's lesser and lesser sellers, it becomes less competitive. Okay, and it becomes less beneficial for consumers. All right, if it's competitive, like in perfect com there are many sellers, okay, consumers have the best deal. It's the best thing for consumers because the market is very competitive. When you have only one seller, the market is not competitive at all, consumers tend to suffer. We will touch on that later. Okay, but before we carry on with perfect com, just take note, perfect com is an ideal. You see this perfect thing here? Perfect. There's no perfection in this world. Okay, so this is an ideal that does not exist in the world. All right, but it's like one end of the ruler is used to measure, okay, the characteristics of a market where it's most ideal, okay, but it doesn't exist in the world. All right, the closest you get to that is monocom. We will touch on that later. All right, so perfect com does not exist in the world. It's just an ideal that we try to move towards as much as possible so that it's best for consumers. Now, what are perfect com characteristics? Now, perfect com characteristics, there's a large number of firms, okay, many firms selling homogeneous products. Now, why don't we say sell the same product? Now, homogeneous means it's so alike that the consumer cannot tell the difference. Okay, so it's to the consumer it's exactly the same thing. So different sellers are selling exact same thing. All right. Now, in this market, we assume there's perfect information. This is on both buyers and seller side. So the buyers know exactly everything about the market. All right, where the sellers are, what time they open, whatever. Okay. The sellers also know everything. What is the cost? Where are all the consumers? All right. So there's perfect information in this perfect competition industry. Okay. Now you can see that some of these characteristics is not realistic in this world. It's very idealistic. Okay. There's no such thing as perfect info in this world. Okay. But because this is an ideal state, all right, the most ideal is that sellers and buyers know everything in the market. Okay, and in this world there is no such thing as usually there's no such thing as totally homogeneous product. There's usually a way to tell the difference between different products. Okay, so you can see that with this kind of characteristics, perfect com is a very ideal kind of market structure which does not exist in the real world. Okay. Now, perfect com are also price takers. Okay, sellers selling in perfect com are called price takers. We'll explain why. Okay, this is a unique characteristics of perfect com, that they are price taker. Okay, so in this market where there are so many firms selling the exact same thing and everyone knows what each other is doing, no one can influence the price. Okay, so as a result, price takers, okay, which we call the sellers selling in this market, they cannot influence the price at all. Okay, they go in and they just sell at a price whatever the others are selling. All right, so this is the unique characteristics of perfect com. Now in perfect com, there's a dual diagram, the market diagram on the left and a firm on the right. Okay, now we use the dual diagram to show how the firm is a price taker. Now in the market demand and supply curve, this is a usual one that we always use. Okay, in the previous topics. Downward sloping demand curve and upward sloping supply curve. Now together it will yield an equilibrium price. And this is the price that the firm will use to price its products. Now because the firm is a very small firm, it can sell whatever quantity that it wants at the ongoing market price. Okay, so the firm simply takes the market price. Now the market price of course can change. Demand curve can shift, supply curve can shift. But whatever is the price, the equilibrium price, the firm will just use that as its own selling price. Okay, and technically, it can sell whatever quantity that it wants at the ongoing market price because it's a very small seller. Okay, so because the demand curve is completely flat, okay, we say that the elasticity is perfectly elastic. Now, as the firm is a price taker, it has only one price that it can sell. Whatever quantity that it sells is only one price, which is PE. Okay, which means that the next one that the firm choose to sell, which is MR, okay, the marginal revenue, which is the additional revenue when it sells one more unit, is always the same as the price. Okay, average is also this price because the firm only has one price. So whatever quantity that it sells, the next one is this price, the average is also this price. Okay, so the demand curve points to the price which is also equivalent to MR, okay, the additional revenue from the next unit, which is the same price, and the average revenue is also the same, which is also the same price. Okay, because the firm is a price taker, they only sell at one price. As a result, you see all these things being equal. The next one, MR, revenue, is also equals to the price. Average is also equals to the price. Okay? Now, let's move on to monopolistic competition. Now, when you look at this table over here, you see that I position monocom closer to perfect com, yeah? Okay? So, monopolistic competition has many characteristics of perfect com. Okay, and it is one of the most competitive market structures that we can get in real life. Okay, so it shares many characteristics with perfect com. Let's take a look. Now in monocom, there is a large number of firms. Okay, and because there's a large number of firms, one firm's action cannot directly, the word here is directly influence another. Okay, this is the same as perfect com. But what is different is that now every firm, they have a small market share. Okay, even though there are a large number of firms, every firm has some small share, and therefore they can influence prices in some ways. Okay, they have some power. Very little, but still some power. Okay. There are many sellers, but take note, these sellers may not be small sellers. Okay, for example, Giordano is MNC. Okay, it operates in many different countries. All right, but it is still one of the many sellers in the clothing industry. So the sellers may not be small sellers, although there are a lot of them. Okay, so you have boutique small sellers to big companies. They still belong to monopolistic competition. Okay, so when you're trying to differentiate or trying to locate whether this industry is it fits into your project firm or not, think about whether are there many other sellers selling the same product. Okay, as long as there's many sellers, even though the seller can be quite large, it still belongs to monocom. All right. Now, one of the reasons why monocom sellers have some kind of market share is because the products are no longer exactly the same. The products are now what we call differentiated. Okay, so same white T-shirt but different branding. Okay, this is a way that you differentiate your product in this market structure. Okay, so the products are not homogeneous anymore. They are close substitutes. Okay, now some people like center of branding. Okay, you change a branding even though it's the same T-shirt they don't like. So they are not perfect substitutes. They are close substitutes. Okay, functionally wise it's exactly the same, but now it's different in some ways. Okay, which allows firms to have a small market share on its own. Huh? The firm can come in to sell or exit the market when it wants. Okay, now because they can do that, they can come in and leave whenever it wants. All firms break even in the long run. Break even means they will not make a profit or make a loss. Okay, they will break even in the long run when there is free entry and exit. We will cover this in market structure 2. Okay, so you take this at face value first. All right. Now, because there are many different sellers in the market, firms usually don't wage price wars against one another. They engage in what we call non-price competition. Okay, like for example, when you sell clothing, the margin can be quite tight, so you usually don't have much to cut. Okay, so what they do is non-price competition. Okay, which involve marketing, which involve customer service, branding, and other ways to make its product feel as special as possible to the consumer. Now, this part is very interesting, and you can apply this to your project, okay, company, to see how your firm or your company, your project does this in a very unique way. Okay, so non-price competition is how firms in this industry will compete with one another. Now, because the product in monopolistic com is now differentiated, so firms now have a small market share and some market power, which means that it is possible for the firm to sell more by lowering the price. Okay. Now, in perfect comp, they wouldn't do that because the product was exactly the same. Okay, they had homogeneous product. Okay, but now their product is a little bit special. Okay, in monocom because of the branding, because of the marketing. All right, so on and so forth. So it has some market power, which means that it can lower price to sell more. Okay, so as you can see, all right, when the output is larger, the price level is actually smaller. All right, so it can lower price to sell more. Okay, now if you work out the maths out, okay, the average revenue, you just take total revenue divided by output. Okay, you can see this in your lecture notes. Now you'll be able to see that from output 1 to 5 or 1 onwards, you see that the price level is also your average revenue. Okay, and you know that price and quantity is how you derive your demand curve. Okay, so from this chapter onwards, you would now know that demand curve is actually your average revenue. All right, you choose to sell at a particular combination, which output at which price, that will be your average revenue. Okay, so they are now equal. Now, when sellers lower price to sell more, marginal revenue, which measures the additional revenue coming from the next unit, will begin to fall faster than average. Average is still averaging out the earlier units which you sold at a higher price, or you can sell at a higher price. Okay, marginal revenue doesn't look back. It looks at the next one, the next one. How much additional revenue you bring in by selling one more product. So when you can lower price to sell more, marginal revenue will fall faster than average. Okay, as you can see in the numbers here. Now, what does this mean? It means that if you compare this to your perfect com, average revenue and marginal revenue are no longer equal. Okay, because the products are now differentiated, firms can now sell more products by lowering the price. So marginal revenue will fall faster than average. Now, this affects how the curves are going to look like. So in monocom, demand curve is a downward sloping curve. Now, a downward sloping curve is our usual demand curve, right? Higher price, consumers buy lesser. Lower price, consumers buy more. Okay, so this is back to the same old, same old. Huh? So demand curve is now downward sloping, unlike perfect com, which is a price taker. Okay, so these are usual demand curve. So this downward sloping curve reflect the fact that the seller can sell more by lowering the price because the products are now differentiated. Okay, MR fall faster. Okay, fall faster than average revenue. Okay, because when you lower price to sell more, marginal revenue, which measures the next revenue coming from the additional unit that you sell, will begin to fall faster than average. Okay, as we explained earlier. So you can see now the two measurements are no longer the same. Okay, MR is a steeper line, it falls faster than AR. Okay. All right, now let's move to the extreme end of the scale to look at monopoly. Okay, now you see the scale that we have here. Okay, when you move to the right, the market become less competitive. There are less sellers and less beneficial for consumers. So at the extreme end, in this market structure is the least competitive. There's only one seller and is of course the least beneficial for consumers. Let's see why. Now in monopoly, there's only one single seller, so the product is unique. Okay, it's unique. It got no close substitutes. It's a unique product. All right. Now, by the way, unique product doesn't mean that it's a necessity. Okay, it can be something that is not needed on a daily basis, but it can still be unique. Okay. Now, why is there only one single seller? Because there are barriers to prevent new firms from coming in. We shall take a look at that later. Okay. Now, because there is only one seller, the firm and the industry are one and the same. Okay, the firm is the industry. Now, because of that, the firm doesn't have any competition, and it has a market power to influence the market by setting the price or output. Okay, huge market power because the firm is the industry and there's no competition. Okay, so this kind of firm, the monopoly, they wield tremendous market power. Okay, now when you are talking about monopoly, please don't mistake monopolistic competition. Okay, spell it out properly, whichever market structure you're talking about. Many students take short form and calls everything monopoly. Okay, only one single seller is monopoly. Monopolistic com is monopolistic com. Okay, it's different. Okay. Now, barriers to entry is a way to block new firms from coming in. Now, this kind of barriers can be legal or natural. Let's take a look at what they are and how they prevent new firms from coming in. Now, if it's a legal barrier, it could be in the form of a public franchise, okay, where an exclusive right is granted to the firm to supply a good or provide a service. So it's something that is given usually by the government, okay, or it can hold a government license to produce a specific good or service. So a legal barrier is like a kind of permission given to one firm to produce that good only. Okay, so it's a kind of legal power, all right, that's usually given by the government. All right, so only one seller is appointed and the one seller becomes a monopoly. Now the seller can also be holding a patent for something, it invented something, okay, so it can register for a patent and no one else can sell the same thing, all right, or a copyright. It's the same thing. Okay, for natural barrier we look at cost. where a company, when it becomes a larger and larger firm, maybe by taking over some firms or buying them over, when the firm becomes larger and larger, it begins to enjoy more and more economies of scale. Now, we touched on this in the previous topic on output and cost. For long run production, some companies enjoy economies of scale, advantages of being a big company. Now, because of that, their costs can be very low. All right. Now, this low cost cannot be matched by a new company, which has just come in to sell. They will not be able to match the size of this incumbent firm with economies of scale. So the low cost that is enjoyed by the seller with economies of scale is a natural barrier. All right, newcomers, when they look at how this firm operate, they feel that they can never match the low cost of this firm and therefore the low price. They will rather not enter at all. Okay, so this low cost as a result of economies of scale act as a natural barrier, all right, for new firms trying to come in. Okay. Now the curves for monopoly is the same as monopolistic competition. Okay, AR, which is a demand curve, is downward sloping. MR is also downward sloping and is steeper. Okay. Now the product I mentioned, the product that the monopoly sells is unique, but it may not be a necessity. So sometimes the monopoly may still want to lower price to sell more. Okay, so it's possible for them to do that. So MR falls faster than AR. Okay, this is the same principle as monopolistic competition. Now, because the monopoly holds such huge market power, it's able to price discriminate. Now, what's price discrimination? It means that you are selling the same product that costs the same to make to different buyers at different prices. Now, usually the monopoly seller will try to gauge who needs his product more. Those who are more desperate, they will try to sell to them at a higher price because they're desperate, they're more willing to buy. Yeah? So those who they think are not so desperate, they will try to lower the price a bit to entice them to buy. Okay, in this way, the monopoly can earn higher revenue compared to just selling at one price. Okay, so there's a gain by doing this to gain higher revenue. Okay, now this takes place quite commonly in the market because not just the monopoly is able to price discriminate. Any firm with significant market share or power is able to price discriminate, including the oligopoly sellers that we'll talk about in the next market structure. Okay, so this is not something that's uncommon. So for your firm that you're doing for your project, go and think about whether are they doing this. They're selling same product to different groups of consumer at different prices. Now, usually it can be disguised by a nice reason, okay, but it's still price discrimination. Okay, inherently, discrimination is not a positive word; it has a negative connotation. Okay, it does mean that it can be unfair. All right, no matter what the reason is. So look beyond the reason. Try to go and discover whether does your firm practice this or not. Okay. Now let's take a look at the last market structure, which is oligopoly. Okay. Now, between monocom and oligopoly, most of your firms should be either this monocom or oligopoly. Okay. So oligopoly market structure is quite common. Okay. In addition to monocom, so most of your companies should either be monocom or oligopoly. Let's take a look at what oligopoly is all about. Now, in oligopoly market, there is now a small number of sellers. It's dominated by a few large sellers. A classic example is the example in the oil market. Okay, only a few gigantic sellers. You recognize them, Shell, Exxon, Mobil, Caltex. Okay, so there's just a few huge sellers that's operating in the market. Now, interdependence of firm is a characteristic that's unique to oligopoly. Now, because the firms are so large, okay, whatever that they choose to do or choose not to do can affect themselves and their competitors directly. Okay, so they are constantly on the lookout for one another. So this market structure of oligopoly is not a place that's very friendly and openly competitive like monocom. All right, it is a market structure that's very apprehensive, very suspicious, where firms are monitoring each other in distrust. Okay. Now, like the monopoly market that we talked about earlier, there are also barriers to entry with regards to oligopoly. Okay. Now, the barriers are the same, so I will not repeat them. Okay. So we talk about legal barriers and maybe natural barriers. Okay. So I'll not repeat them. Now, the product that oligopoly seller can sell, it can be either homogeneous or differentiated. So either one. Okay. Homogeneous usually refers to industrial goods. Okay. Now, the homogeneous here is a little bit different from perfect com, where we assume it to be really purely homogeneous. Now, in oligopoly definition, when we talk about homogeneous, we talk about industry goods that from the naked eye we can't tell them apart. Of course, if you use some scientific equipment, you can, all right, but usually we can't. Okay, so some homogeneous example products or homogeneous goods will be steel, cement, and raw materials. Okay, so take note that this homogeneous is a bit different. Naked eye we can't tell them apart, but with scientific equipment we can. Okay, or they could be selling differentiated goods. Okay, like cars. Okay, we only have about 10 or so car makers in the world. Electronics, we talk about big ones like Apple, Samsung. Okay, big companies that dominate the market. Now let's take a look at the king demand curve of oligopoly. Now, the oligopoly has the most distinct demand curve that you see of all the four market structures. Now, the king demand curve is largely derived by the interdependence of firms that we talk about. Okay. Now, firms are usually unfriendly, apprehensive, and very suspicious of one another. So this kind of thinking, all right, is applied to the demand curve that of how firms see the market. Okay. Now, to the oligopoly seller, there's now a market price. Okay. Now, from the market price, the oligopoly sellers will be thinking, if I increase my price, my competitors, which are not friendly to me, they will definitely not follow. Okay, because we are competitors. So when they see me increasing price, they will just let me increase price on my own. So after I increase price, their current price would seem more competitive and they were able to get all my customers. All right. So because of that, if I increase price, these fellas, they will not follow, and as a result, I will lose a lot of customers. Okay. So when I increase price from the market price, I will lose a lot of consumers or customers. That means my demand curve above the market price is elastic. Elastic means I up price a bit, I lose a lot of customers. Okay, so the demand curve above market price is elastic. All right, now on the other hand, if I want to decrease price below the current market price, okay, now remember, my competitors are not friendly to me. Okay, if I want to decrease price, I'm sure they will follow my reduction in price. Otherwise, if I reduce price, my product is cheaper than my competitors, all their customers will come to me. So because they're not friendly towards me, they will definitely follow my reduction in price. Okay, so if I reduce price, I will not get a lot more business either, because all of them will be reducing price. Therefore, the demand for my product below the market price is inelastic. I can reduce price, but very few people or more people will buy from me, very few, because all my competitors are also reducing price. So my demand curve below the market price is inelastic. Okay, so this gives rise to a king demand curve. The king demand curve means an angle. King means an angle. Okay, so it is just a demand curve with two different elasticities, reflecting how, as an oligopoly seller, how I see the market. Above the market price is elastic because if I increase the price, I lose a lot of business because my competitors will not follow. The market below the market price is inelastic because if I reduce price, all of them will follow. So I end up having no additional advantage. So it's inelastic below the market price. Okay, so therefore I have two different elasticities joined here at an angle, okay, which give rise to the king demand curve of oligopoly. So this is the king demand curve of oligopoly consisting of two different elasticities. So this is also my AR line, okay, my average revenue, which is reflected as a demand curve. Now, so this is the king demand curve of oligopoly, elastic on top, inelastic at the bottom. Now, with this kind of demand curve, you know the MR will look very different, okay? Now, you imagine that each part has its own MR. So the elastic portion have its own MR this way, okay? Now, it stops here because this is where the AR stops, okay? Now, so this MR, this black color line is for the elastic portion of the demand curve. This bottom portion is for the inelastic portion of the demand curve. So it has its own MR. Okay. So this king here, okay, is like a point that separates. On the left is the elastic portion, and on the right is the inelastic portion. Okay. So both of them got their own MR. Now, because the MR line is broken, we make a man-made bridge to bridge them together. So your MR line is actually like a weird Z shape. Okay, it comes down from here, follow the mouse, and then it joins through the gulf here. Okay, and then the bottom portion here. All right. Now, this is the end of market structure part 1. Part 2 will look at more technical parts of the market structures. We talk about profits and revisit some of the diagrams. Okay.